Pope John Paul I. Pope John Paul I, elected on August 26, 1978, died suddenly on September 28, 1978, just 33 days after his election. Officially, Pope John Paul's death was said to be due to a heart attack. However, some medical experts and critics consider that the cause is not entirely convincing. Post-mortem studies conducted on the Pope's body showed signs of heart damage that were out of proportion to the Pope's relatively young age of 65 and his previous good health. Some medical experts argue that the possibility of poisoning or overdosing of certain drugs is more plausible. Pope John Paul I was known for his desire to reform and clean up the Catholic Church, especially in terms of Vatican finances and administration. One of the main policies proposed was to improve transparency in the management of Vatican finances and dismantle the illicit practices associated with the Vatican Bank, such as involvement in the Banco Ambrosiano scandal. Banco Ambrosiano was Italy's largest bank that collapsed in 1982, with losses of around $1.3 billion US, much of which could not be accounted for. Those with a vested interest in the bank likely felt threatened by the Pope's intention to do a purge. Even more suspicious is how the death of Pope John Paul I was reported. On the day of his death, the Pope's body was found in his room by his secretary with no signs of medical treatment or interventions performed on the body after death. In addition, the initial report from the Vatican doctor who first examined the Pope's body showed uncertainty with the cause of death not immediately given. The Pope's death was also colored by the uncertainty of the autopsy procedure. Although the family and many in the Vatican wanted further investigation, a formal autopsy was not performed, and many details regarding the Pope's physical condition were not adequately explained. In 1989, author David Yallop released a book titled In God's Name that delved deeper into the death of Pope John Paul I, suggesting that the Pope may have been assassinated because of his desire to expose abuses of power and corruption within the Vatican. This book further strengthened the conspiracy theories surrounding his death. Pope Clement XIII. Pope Clement XIII served from 1758 until his sudden death on February 2, 1769, just one night before he planned to announce a major decision in defense of the Society of Jesus Jesuit order. His death just before such a crucial decision led many historians and conspiracy theorists to speculate about a possible assassination orchestrated by anti-Jesuit political forces. The 18th century was a time when Europe's absolute monarchies, especially France, Spain, Portugal, and Austria, viewed the Jesuits as a political threat. The Jesuits were considered to have too much intellectual power and influence, especially in the fields of education and diplomacy. The group was also known to be very loyal to the Pope and often opposed the power of absolute Catholic kings. Pope Clement XIII was known as a staunch defender of the Jesuit order. He resisted pressure from European royal powers demanding the dissolution of the order. By February 3, 1769, he had prepared a pontifical document, bulla, that would defend the official existence of the Jesuits and shame the European Catholic monarchies that were forcing the expulsion of the Jesuits from their territories. However, the night before the document was to be published, the Pope was found dead suddenly. No autopsy was performed. He was 75 years old, yet he showed no symptoms of serious illness. No symptoms of stroke, fever, or heart trouble were recorded by Vatican Palace witnesses before the night of his death. Contemporary reports suggested that he appeared in good health at an official dinner with several cardinals. Hours later, he was found dead with his body turning blue, a feature that, according to some toxicologists, could point to symptoms of cyanide poisoning. The absence of a forensic investigation, autopsy, or official medical report made suspicions rise. The Vatican was under immense pressure from the Catholic monarchies at the time, and the decision to stop the publication of documents that the Pope had prepared only reinforced the impression that there were forces that wanted to silence him abruptly. Some modern researchers point to secret agents of the Bourbon monarchy, a coalition between France and Spain, as possible culprits. At the time, agents of the royal court were known for their ability to infiltrate the papal court. They also had access to certain poisons that were difficult to detect. Private letters from French diplomats of the time indicate that the Vatican was playing with fire for resisting Bourbon pressure. The letter stated that if Rome does not surrender, then history will force them to do so. This phrase is often cited by conspiracy theorists as evidence of pressure accompanied by threats. Pope Pius XII. Pope Pius XII, who served from 1939 to 1958, died on October 9, 1958, after more than 2 decades leading the Catholic Church. The cause of his death was officially reported as a stroke. Pope Pius XII led the Catholic Church during one of the most critical periods in world history, World War II. He received harsh criticism for not being vocal enough in condemning the anti-Semitism policies implemented by Germany. Although the Pope tried to maintain the Vatican's position of neutrality in the global conflict, many historians and Jewish activists felt that his actions lacked decisiveness against German crimes at the time. During his pontificate, Pius XII also maintained diplomatic relations with fascist states, including Italy under Benito Mussolini and Germany. Although the Vatican made efforts to protect some Jewish groups, many felt that the Pope was more focused on maintaining the power of the Church than speaking out against the crimes committed by those parties. Pope Pius XII died at the age of 82 after suffering a stroke. However, medical uncertainties and his actual state of health before his death led to further speculation. Some reports from eyewitnesses revealed that the Pope had in fact been seriously ill for several weeks before his death, but no further investigative efforts were made regarding the more specific cause of his death. This medical uncertainty adds to the theory that the Pope may not have died from a natural stroke. Some historians believe that he could have been assassinated by certain parties who felt threatened by his policies or who wanted to change the direction of church policy after the war. Speculation about poisoning, either directly or indirectly, arose because of the profound and geopolitical nature of many of the decisions made by Pope Pius XII. There are several theories that Pope Pius XII may have been assassinated because of his pro-German policies or as an attempt to change the direction of the papacy after World War II. Some historians have even suggested that the Pope may have been assassinated by those who were unhappy with his opposition to fascism, or even by those within the Church who wanted to change the political direction of the Vatican after the war. While there is no conclusive evidence to support these claims, speculation remains regarding third-party involvement in the Pope's death, especially due to his ties with fascist states and his very cautious approach to foreign policy during the time of World War II. Pope Alexander VI. Pope Alexander VI, who came from the Borgia family, famous for scandal and political intrigue, died on August 18, 1503, under mysterious circumstances. Pope Alexander VI, whose real name was Rodrigo Borgia, became pope in 1492. During his reign, he was involved in a number of major scandals ranging from the powerful influence that the Borgia family had in the Vatican to his controversial sexual relationships and use of nepotism to elevate family to important positions in the Church. Alexander VI's papacy was also characterized by a remarkable consolidation of political power, including marriage arrangements and alliances with the rulers of the secular world, as well as actions to strengthen Borgia control over territories in Italy. Despite his great influence, Alexander VI was also widely hated by various groups within the Church and the secular world government. There were many enemies among the Vatican elite who felt threatened by his boundless nepotism and extremely lavish lifestyle. Pope Alexander VI died after experiencing symptoms of a profound illness, officially referred to as food poisoning. He was found dead after complaining of severe stomach pains. The symptoms of poisoning were followed by worsening nausea and dizziness. However, the sudden death of this highly influential pope has led to further speculation about possible darker causes. Some historians believe that the pope may have been assassinated through poison, which could have easily been administered to a man leading an empire like the Vatican. There are theories that claim that his political enemies, including family members or high-ranking church officials, may have poisoned the pope in an attempt to stop his policies and great influence. In addition, Pope Alexander VI had many enemies who openly wanted to see the collapse of his power, both from within the church and from aristocratic families threatened by Borgia domination. There are theories that link the death of Pope Alexander VI to wider political issues, including a conspiracy to overthrow or reduce his family's influence in the Vatican. His sudden death followed some unpopular policies, especially policies that favored his family by elevating his children to important positions in the church and politics. Conspiracy theorists say that political forces from both the church and the secular world may have felt the need to put an end to the Pope's highly controversial leadership. In addition, at the time of Alexander VI's death, the Vatican was engaged in several important treaties with major European rulers. It is possible that political arrangements favorable to the Borgia family threatened the political balance, and therefore the Pope may have been the target of an international conspiracy. Pope Leo XI. Pope Leo XI, who only led the Catholic Church for 27 days in 1605, is one of the popes whose death is fraught with suspicion. Although many ascribe his death to old age, he was 69 years old. His very short tenure and unclear cause of death gave rise to conspiracy theories regarding a possible assassination. Pope Leo XI, whose real name was Alessandro Ottaviano de' Medici, was elected pope on April 1st, 1605. As a member of the influential Medici family, he had a strong political and power background. Although his tenure was very short, the early policies he implemented were concerned with improving the Vatican's debt-ridden financial situation and renewing morality in the Church. However, Pope Leo XI was also faced with many political pressures, both from within the Church and outside. Many secular rulers in Italy and Western Europe wanted more influence over the Church, and Pope Leo XI was seen as a figure who could be a hindrance to them. Under these circumstances, although he was seen as a wise and moderate person, he may have been targeted by individuals who wanted to see a change in leadership more in line with their interests. Pope Leo XI was found dead on April 27, 1605, having only been in office for less than a month. The official cause of his death was indigestion or stomach disease, which was considered a natural cause. However, there are no clear medical details or evidence to support such claims. Some reports from people close to the Pope mention that Leo XI appeared to be healthy and showed no symptoms of serious illness before his death. In fact, on the night before his death, he was reportedly still attending meetings with cardinals. Given the rapid change in his health condition, many theories have emerged that the Pope may have been murdered or poisoned. Although there was no direct evidence pointing to murder, the vagueness of the symptoms exhibited before his death led many to doubt that it was a natural death. This incident further strengthens the theory that the aged Pope could have been the target of a conspiracy. Pope Leo XI, as a member of the Medici family, had many political enemies. The long-ruling Medici family in Italy, especially in Florence, probably created a lot of animosity within the Catholic Church and the European political world. Some historians argue that Pope Leo XI may have been assassinated by those who disagreed with his policies that may have gone against the interests of the family and other secular rulers. There is also speculation that he could have been targeted by those who wanted a more impressionable pope, or one who was more open to accommodating political policies more favorable to secular rulers. Given the intense pressure that Pope Leo XI faced, it is possible that the Church's leadership being too independent for some could have been the reason behind his death. Pope Innocent XI. Pope Innocent XI was a very anti-monarchical pope and strongly opposed royal influence on the Church. One of his main policies was to oppose the claims of European kings to control church affairs in their countries. For example, he responded strongly to the request of the kings of France and Spain for the appointment of church officials more in line with their royal interests. Pope Innocent XI also severed diplomatic relations with several European monarchies that tried to curb the freedom of the church, including the strong influence of France on church structures. These policies made Pope Innocent XI very unpopular among secular rulers who felt that their power was threatened by the Pope's stance that favored the spiritual power of the Church over relations with earthly rulers. Pope Innocent XI died on August 12, 1689, at the age of 75. The cause of death was officially cited as a stroke, but many doubted the report. Some historians note that the Pope appeared to be in good health before his death, and there were no signs of illness indicative of a stroke or the usual medical symptoms preceding a stroke. The sudden death of Pope Innocent XI immediately led to speculation that he may have been assassinated, either by those who felt threatened by his harsh policies towards royal power, or by political enemies within the Vatican itself. The lack of clarity regarding the cause of his death further strengthened the theory that his death could have been planned by individuals who felt aggrieved by the Pope's anti-monarchical policies. There are several theories that link the death of Pope Innocent XI to a larger political conflict at the time. One theory is that the Pope was killed by allies of the French or Spanish monarchies who felt that the Pope's policies were hindering their control over the Church. These countries had a great interest in strengthening their control over Church affairs within their territories, and Pope Innocent XI opposing their influence was seen as a great obstacle to their ambitions. Some historians have also proposed that the Pope may have been assassinated by groups within the Church who felt that the Pope's anti-monarchy policy was too disruptive to their relations with secular rulers. In this view, Pope Innocent XI not only faced enemies from outside, but also from within the Vatican itself. Pope Sylvester II. Pope Sylvester II, born Gerber of Aurillac around 946, was a revolutionary figure who took medieval Europe by storm. A genius scientist far ahead of his time, he mastered mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy in a way that 11th century society considered almost supernatural. A gifted educator, Gerbert developed advanced mathematical instruments, introduced Arabic numerals to Europe, and created a revolutionary mechanical model of a planetarium. He taught at various schools in Europe and later became the tutor of King Robert II of France, before finally being elected Pope in 999. His death on May 12, 1003 is filled with mystery and speculation of murder. Within a short time of leading the Church, he died under suspicious circumstances. Some historians believe he was murdered because his knowledge threatened the power of the traditional Church. The main conspiracy theories point to several possible masterminds: conservative Church factions who felt threatened by his progressive thinking, European nobles who disliked his intellectual influence, and his political opponents who felt threatened by his reforms. The myth was that Sylvester II had a pact with the devil, which was reinforced by his supposed supernatural knowledge. Some reports suggest he was poisoned, although direct evidence was never found. His greatest legacy is his contribution to science. He introduced algorithms, encouraged the use of Arabic numerals, and became one of the most brilliant scientists of his time, far beyond conventional medieval thinking. Pope Benedict IX. Pope Benedict IX, who served as Pope 3 times in a turbulent period, died in 1055 under very controversial and mysterious circumstances. The death of Pope Benedict IX is often attributed to conspiracies and internal Vatican unrest, given the many political and social tensions that occurred during his reign. He was known for his intriguing leadership and behavior that did not conform to the papal norms of the time. Pope Benedict IX, born Theophylactus of Tusculum, is one of the most controversial popes in the history of the Catholic Church. He was first elected pope at the very young age of 11 in 1032 and ruled in a very messy and scandalous style. His reign was characterized by many internal conflicts, including family rivalries, corruption, and flagrant moral transgressions. As a member of the influential Tusculum family, Benedict IX was known for utilizing his papal position for personal gain, including selling church positions and enriching his family. His leadership was deeply unpopular, especially among church members and the public who felt that the church had fallen into the hands of people unfit to lead. Pope Benedict IX died in 1055, but the cause of his death remains unclear. Some reports suggest that he died after an illness, while other sources claim that he was assassinated or removed from office through violent means. The death of Pope Benedict IX was followed by the emergence of many conspiracy theories which suggested that he was murdered by his opponents who felt threatened by his intriguing rule. One popular theory was that Pope Benedict IX was killed by groups within the Church who felt that he was too corrupt and unfit to lead. The Tusculum family that dominated the Church at that time also faced many enemies, both within the Vatican and outside, who sought to remove their influence. Some historians argue that the Pope could have been the victim of an internal Church conspiracy to end the Tusculum family's dominance. Pope Celestine V. Pope Celestine V, who was elected Pope in 1294, was one of the shortest-lived popes, lasting only 5 months. The death of Pope Celestine V on May 19, 1296, a few years after he abdicated the papal throne, invited widespread speculation and conspiracy theories as to whether his death was the result of an assassination or whether he died from conditions exacerbated by inhumane imprisonment. Pope Celestine V, real name Pietro Angelieri, is notable for his short leadership and his decision to resign from the papal office, a very rare move in church history. Before becoming pope, Celestine V was a monk known for his simple and pious life. When he was elected pope, many believed that he would bring simplicity and spirituality to the church. However, Pope Celestine V was not prepared for the great responsibility that came with a papal position. He felt unsuited to the political and administrative demands required, so finally on December 13th, 1294, he resigned, making himself the only pope in history to ever resign voluntarily. His decision to resign was considered a controversial act, as at that time the office of pope was considered an unassailable position. The transfer of power to Pope Boniface VIII, who was elected after his resignation, brought great political and power tensions within the Vatican. Pope Celestine V died on May 19, 1296, 2 years after his abdication. Some historical sources mention that the Pope died in captivity in Fumone Castle, a fortress used by Pope Boniface VIII to confine him. Some historians suggest that Pope Celestine V may have been assassinated by the troops of Pope Boniface VIII, who feared that his influence might revive or become a symbol of resistance to Pope Boniface's authority. Although there is no direct evidence to suggest assassination, this theory is supported by the fact that Pope Celestine V died in a very poor condition, with reports describing his body as apparently very fragile and distressed. Some theories even claim that he may have been poisoned or killed in more subtle ways, although this remains speculation without concrete evidence. Pope John Paul II. Pope John Paul II survived an assassination attempt that took place on May 13, 1981. This assassination attempt was made by Mehmet Ali Aka, a Turkish native who shot the Pope in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Although the Pope managed to survive and undergo a series of surgeries to save his life, this near death led to speculation and conspiracy theories regarding who might have been behind the assassination attempt. Pope John Paul II suffered severe gunshot wounds with 2 bullets penetrating his body. One of the bullets hit the intestines while the other hit the Pope's right hand. Saving the Pope's life required several major surgeries, and although the recovery process took a while, the Pope eventually survived the assassination attempt. This shows how close the Pope came to death, with many doctors doubting the possibility of him surviving after the injuries he sustained. An investigation into the assassination attempt was soon launched, and Mehmet Ali Aka claimed that he was working alone, but many doubted this claim. Aka claimed that he had no personal motives and only wanted to kill the Pope on ideological grounds. However, there is speculation that certain forces orchestrated this assassination attempt. Some conspiracy theories attribute this attack to countries that were dissatisfied with Pope John Paul II's stance on communism, especially his harsh policy towards the Soviet Union. One of the more popular theories is that the KGB, the intelligence agency of the Soviet Union, may have been involved in the assassination attempt during the time of Pope John Paul II. The Vatican and the Pope himself played an important role in supporting pro-democracy movements in Eastern Europe, including in Poland, the Pope's home country. The Pope was known for supporting Solidarity, a labor movement in Poland that opposed the communist regime. Many believe that the Soviet Union saw the Pope as a threat to their influence in the region, so they may have been involved in attempts to silence him. In addition to speculation about KGB involvement, there are also theories linking the assassination to the Turkish mafia. Some reports suggest that Aka had ties to criminal groups that had an interest in stopping the Pope's influence in Eastern Europe and the Islamic world. The role of the mafia is not fully understood, but it is thought that they may also have had their own agenda in planning the attack.